cell anemia is caused by a single letter change in the DNA. This in turn alters one of the amino acids in the hemoglobin protein. Valine sits in a position where glutamic acid should be. The valine makes the hemoglobin molecules stick together when oxygen tension is low, forming long fibers that distort the shape of the red blood cells, and this brings on an attack.
For Scott Reynolds tonight, we begin with a Wave 3 exclusive of potential therapy that could cure the world of sickle cell anemia.
About 4% of babies are born with a red blood cell disorder like sickle cell anemia, and in Kentucky, 90% of sickle cell patients live in Louisville, where this breakthrough research and treatment is underway. Medical reporter Lori Lyle is here with this amazing news.
Thanks, Dawn. You know, in the U.S., only half of sickle cell patients survive past the age of 40. A bone marrow transplant can functionally cure the disease, meaning you still carry the gene, but few people find a match, and there's up to a 20% risk of dying because of that transplant. Well, research at U of L is changing that and already changing lives.
I'm still pro.
In the safety of his home, 10-year-old Amos is pro at many sports, tennis, hockey, fishing, but for years unable to test those skills for real.
I feel like droopy and all weird and kind of dizzy all the time. And I want to go outside, but they won't let me go outside.
His friends at his age now belong to Boy Scout. They go to camping. We can't even let him go to somebody's house.
Amos has sickle cell anemia. His red blood cells are shaped kind of like bananas instead of tennis balls, limiting blood supply and damaging organs.
There's no cure for it. That's what we were told.
And at 3 years old,
we almost lost him. And he was in critical care for almost a week.
And every 5 weeks after, lengthy blood exchange transfusions to help stabilize the condition to buy some time.
We know somebody that just lost their kid, and he's just 28 years, had a stroke.
Amos's older sister, Abby, understands the danger.
Sometimes worried that he's really sick.
I wake up, I go touch him and make sure he's still alive, you know.
But that fear is now 2 years behind them.
And he's actually over 2 years out. So
data reporting a remarkable change. Amos's body now making normal red blood cells with a breakthrough procedure from Dr. Suzanne Ilstad's labs at the University of Louisville.
It's been known now for about 10 years that bone marrow transplant is the only curative therapy.
But with a traditional transplant, only 1 in 5 candidates find the needed perfect match. And when they do, it requires wiping out a patient's immune system, a risk of dying as high as 20%.
We have developed a way to make bone marrow transplants safe enough to take that risk from 10 to 20% chance of dying to less than 0.5% chance.
In 1996, Ilstad discovered a cell in bone marrow called a facilitating cell that helps bone marrow transplants take without as much matching, without killing out all the existing marrow.
This conditioning is safe enough you can do it as an outpatient.
Because Amos is one of the first to undergo the new transplant protocol, he required some hospital stay, but since
he hasn't been hospitalized for anything.
They're off immunosuppression and they are asymptomatic. They haven't had to come in for transfusion therapies.
Amos is one of 2 patients now 2 years post-transplant.
They're behaving as if they don't have sickle cell disease.
And even though their donor cells are only ranging between 20 to 30%,
they are making only normal red cells. So this picture means that all of the red cells being produced are from the donor.
Amos's donor is little sis Chi-Chi.
And I'm happy he's feeling well, and I hope God keeps him like this.
Healthy and, as big brothers go, completely normal.
Kind of annoying. Sometimes he doesn't let me play the Wii.
That too will soon change as Amos puts down game controls now that he's in control.
I can play soccer, I can run faster, I can breathe easier.
Mom and Dad too breathing easier, believing the impossible prayer is answered.
I think he's cured by the grace of God.
By the grace of God, I do.
Disease-free, 2 years, and for sure, counting. Now, the 2 children living disease-free had perfect match donors, but the FDA has approved a 3 of 6 bone marrow match, which could be a mom or a dad donating to the child. And this research goes far beyond sickle cell. Dr. Elstad is using it with heart and kidney transplants. She's ready to treat the first MS patient and other autoimmune diseases to follow. The list is
Executive Director of the Sickle Cell Disease Association, Michelle Wall, a freshman at A&T. Welcome, ladies.
Well, thank you.
Good to have you on Try It Today. That's the official Try It Today handshake. Anybody ask you?
Great.
You know, let me just say off the bat that Michelle, who is, as I said, a freshman in college now, at age 4, was the poster child for Sickle Cell Disease Association, right?
I was the local poster child, and in 94, 95, I was the national poster child.
I want to come back to you and ask you something about that in just a second. But first, I want to start to Gladys and ask, what is sickle cell disease?
Well, Jim, sickle cell disease is a hereditary blood disorder. It is inherited. It's not contagious. And it means that a person must have parents, one with, both with a sickle gene. And it's passed on, and it's a 25% chance if both parents have a sickle gene, the child may have sickle cell disease, like Michelle here.
What are the, I mean, what are the symptoms?
Well, it can be very painful. Now, it depends on which form. There are several forms, SS, SC, etc. Some are not as painful, not as much trouble as some. But for a lot of people with SS, it means that they have tremendous pain. What happens, the blood cells sickle. And then they clump, stop in the blood in the joints, etc. Cause a lot of pain, can cause strokes, can cause just a lot of problems, organ failures.
Now, I've always understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is mainly a disease that, this is a disease that affects mainly people of color. Am I right or wrong?
Well, in the United States, you're right, and well across the world, people of color. In the United States, it's more African Americans. Now we have a huge Hispanic population that's affected with the most severe form as well. We have Southeast Asians who are affected with a form called thalassemia.
Right.
So it is more people of color, but it's not just African Americans.
Now I want to go back to Michelle for a second, and you were diagnosed at birth on this. How has the disease impacted your life?
The disease itself hasn't really impacted the form that I have. It's not as severe as others. Like, I don't really have that many crises. I've never had one. But being the poster child, I got to travel and meet new people, and it just was a really good experience.
And try to promote, you know, research and everything else that you can do. And now, what's the prognosis? I mean, you're sitting here, you're what, 18, 19 years old?
18, yes.
What's the prognosis? What do doctors say? I mean, do you have to slow down with certain activities? Do you have to take certain medicines? What happens?
They tell you have to take certain medicines from birth to like a certain age to see how well you cope with it. But they tell you to kind of slow down, exercise and stuff. But if you feel fine, then you can go ahead. Like, I'm a normal.
That's great. And now, how did you get to decide on A&T? Did you get any special scholarship help or anything like that?
No. A&T was like a family school, and I just really love everything about it.
That's a strong family. Yes. I mean, it's like Harvard or something. You go to A&T, you don't want to mess with that. I mean, people say, we're going to A&T. They sit their kids down at age 1 day old, and they say they're going to. Gladys, what areas does the association serve?
Okay, Jim, before I mention it, I want to mention Michelle, you know, I talked about the forms has SC, which is not as severe, but is a great example of what children, even with any form, can do in terms of growing up. But we also, since '94, have been doing HIV and AIDS as well, and we do diabetes screening as well now. So we've expanded to be more of a holistic health agency, and we serve Forsyth, Guilford, Alamance, Randolph, Rockingham, and Caswell counties.
That's great. Now, I think there's a website or something that
There
we can
is.
put up? I'm going to look
There
at my
is.
notes as J. Paul puts this up, but there's a website. Tell us about that.
The
if you would.
website is www.scdap.org.
Okay. All right.
And,